Hello friend, good to see you again. Today I wanted to unpack hidden childhood trauma and the symptoms of that, the signs that might be something that you're dealing with. And why this is so important and powerful on our journey is because if we know that the root cause of what we're dealing with actually goes back to these sort of hidden issues that we've suppressed, we've buried, we've forgotten about, we've kept so deep down, then, that's the first powerful step in healing that. If we don't recognize it, if we don't understand that, it's very easy to discount it, to see our symptoms or issues as signs of, inadequacy or something wrong with us, or we're just broken or a bad person even. We tend to put a lot of judgment and labels around it and give ourselves a very hard time. But if we can understand that, there's actually unresolved, stressful experiences, very difficult, traumatic experiences from childhood, which can be a variety of forms. We've talked about that in other videos. Then it allows us to bring compassion into it. We can understand that, this is why I've always struggled with this issue or that issue. This is why these symptoms have appeared through my life. And so, with understanding, then we can be kinder to ourselves, we can be gentler, we bring that compassion. And of course, that's the precursor for healing. Healing is really bringing light into darkness. Healing is love dissolving fear. And so, by having that understanding, we can be more compassionate and kind and gentle with ourselves. That's bringing that loving light, that loving attention then, a more gentle acceptance, as Eugene Gendlin used to call it, a gentle acceptance of these parts of us. So instead of judging them, resisting them, pushing them away, which just keeps them stuck, actually gives them more power, they start to heal. They start to transmute because we're approaching it in that healing stance, as I like to call it. So let's have a deeper dive into some of these symptoms, and then we'll go into a hypno process. So signs, symptoms, issues that can be related to unresolved childhood trauma, hidden issues, trauma that we haven't dealt with, things like emotional regulation difficulties. Now, emotional regulation covers a lot of stuff, but it can include things like anxiety, fear and anger mixed up, secondary emotion of anxiety, depression, which is more a mix of grief and anger mixed up. Obviously obsessive compulsive, these sorts of issues, aggression issues, anger management issues, all these sort of issues we can have with emotional regulation can well stem or be driven by trauma, stress, unresolved experience. It can go back to birth, back in utero even. There are other things that can even be absorbed and inherited that aren't ours, that we come from our parents, our ancestors. And so recognising the deep threads of this can explain emotional regulation issues. It can explain things like low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-love, these sorts of issues that can even wind up in something like self-defeating disorder. Very easy to understand that could come from criticism, attack, being abused, neglected as a child, which kind of says to the child in so many ways that they're not worthy. That's an obvious one. Complex post-traumatic stress, a bit different to post-traumatic stress per se in adults where they've gone to war or they've been in a terrible accident or disaster situation. That's a different kind of post-traumatic stress, experiences that have been too hard, too much to process at the time. And we go to techniques like EMDR and EFT and hypnotherapy and drug-assisted therapies, to help process these very difficult experiences. Complex post-traumatic stress tends to come from childhood trauma because it's happening so early in life. It's so hidden and it tends to be ongoing. Usually these issues are not sort of one-off things. They tend to get dealt with okay. But if it's an ongoing problem growing up in a dysfunctional family, nothing's getting dealt with properly. And it accumulates and it's messing up our development. So we end up with what they call a complex post-traumatic stress. Sure sign of unresolved childhood trauma. Attachment issues, relationship issues, intimacy issues, friendships, social issues. Think of, all those times, we struggle with trust, vulnerability, being open, all those things that relationship invites us into. And also on a social level, on a friendship level, often we can avoid that, or we can be kind of clumsy in that. Think of someone who's maybe trying too hard, or I don't know, all these different ways. But we can stem this back to childhood trauma showing up in these attachment problems, relationship problems generally. Physical health issues. They've well proven through mind-body science how stress is related to, I think they say 95% of physical issues underlying any kind of problem. And I think there's more awareness now through functional medicine, German new medicine, of how unresolved emotion, trapped emotion, can be the underlying cause of what manifests in physical issues. So just like things show up in emotional issues or mental issues, absolutely it can show up eventually in physical symptomatology. So understanding childhood trauma allows us to get to the root cause. And if we're clearing the problem, the stress, the charge at the root level, it can have a beneficial effect then on even physical issues. Addiction, that's an obvious one. Addictions, according to Gabor Mate, almost always have a trauma base or cause behind it. Some people argue that we can just be addicted to something because we're addicted to it. But if we're using chemicals or things or shopping or TV or sex or food or alcohol and other drugs, dial it up all the way up to very hard drugs, gambling, very intense experiences. If we're using these intense experiences to manage or medicate our pain, then we need to deal with the pain if we want to clear the addiction. It's very common for people to try to change an addictive pattern, but not getting deep enough into the underlying trauma. They just swap addictions. It's quite common. We can just go from one to another. So we want to get to the underlying causes. Another good reason to know if we do have hidden childhood trauma. Developmental delays, trauma in childhood under lots of stress. We can't learn. We can't think clearly. We can't pay attention. We can't focus. We might be really dissociated. We might be in such a freeze state, so withdrawn. And so I've explored these different trauma reactions in a different video, and we'll unpack that more. But the broad picture here is that if we're dealing with a lot of stress, it's going to get in the way of our learning, our development, in all ways at school. How are we going to think clearly and learn in that way? Socially, it's getting in the way of our interaction. Even physically, there can be a stunting in development there. You could probably tell me if you add a few in the comments if you can think of it. But of course, it makes sense that these unresolved issues, this charge, jams us up, and that can cause really serious problems in our development as a child. Another area is in the realm of personality disorders. I'm not a big fan on, diagnostic labels, but if someone's been diagnosed with something like borderline PD or narcissistic PD or the old self-defeating PD or masochistic issues, these are pretty strong clinical labels, but once again, they do point to unresolved stress, unresolved fear, guilt, rage, trauma that's rattling around in that person's psyche that's been so intense, and somehow there's been a real kind of damage in the personality development early on. So once again, that's not going to change without deep healing work. So, I hope that wasn't too depressing. We're covering a lot of these heavy duty things, but the intention here, of course, is to help you to understand that if there's one of those issues, or two or three or half a dozen of these issues that kind of resonate for you, that say, oh yeah, I've always had an issue there, oh that's always shown up. It might be in mild forms, it might be severe, but if you can relate to that, then this is maybe a game-changing bit of awareness then. Maybe it hasn't been addressed. A lot of standard psychology medicine doesn't go deep enough. And so if we look at it in that deeper sense, there's a trauma experienced in the womb, there's trauma experienced growing up in this dysfunctional family, then there's an explanation. Then it takes a load off. Then all that judgment, self-blame that we tend to load on around these things. What's wrong with me? I'm a bad person, I'm broken. We can let that all go and really get going then on a deeper healing journey. So let's jump into some process, and I'd invite you to close down the eyes if you're comfortable, taking a deep breath, just letting your awareness move from the outside world to the inside world. Just allowing yourself to pause just for a few minutes and let your awareness turn more deeply within. You as the greater you, bringing your gentle awareness to what's inside. And what if you were to invite forward a wounded part of you? He, she might be younger, older, happy, sad, but a part of you that's been struggling. Part of you maybe that got forgotten or buried or rejected, pushed away. Maybe this inner child part is hiding behind the furniture somewhere, feeling so rejected and unwanted. But as the greater you, the adult you, as you turn your awareness, just with a gentle curiosity, just a loving invitation to them to show themselves. You might like to say that, oh, I'm so sorry I've been so harsh with you. I've tried to get rid of you because there's so much pain there, but I understand now that you're a part of me that's actually been crying out for help in different ways. You're a part of me that's really just been trying to get some attention through pain. And I turn towards you now with love, with kindness. I invite you to show yourself and know that I get it now. I'm ready now to deal with my wounding, because time's gone past, we've grown up, we've built enough strength, resilience, wisdom as an adult now to be ready to deal with these old problems. And I want you to know that there's nothing that won't heal. There's no darkness that light doesn't dissolve away. And so I welcome you to come forward. And if that part of you is open, this might take a few goes before they're ready to show themselves. But maybe they're here right front and centre now. They've been waiting for this for a long time, and you just welcome them into your loving arms. If they're open to it, give them a big hug. Maybe it's enough for them just to hold hands. Maybe it's just enough for them to be in the same room with you at the moment. But at whatever level it is, you as the greater you just sending this love, these words of apology. I'm so sorry I've tried to get rid of you, but I welcome you now. I'm ready to understand the messages you've been giving, the symptoms, the signs that you've been using to tell me of your suffering, your pain, your trauma. I'm here now to help you. There's nothing you could do that would make me leave you, nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. And just taking a moment to be with this part of you in maybe this very new way, maybe a very different way, maybe a much more loving way than before. And when you're ready, feeling this part of you merging back within, but just notice the look on their face, just notice their body language. How are they now compared to before? Same or different? All parts of self, whole, integrated, merged into the oneness that you are, gently coming back into the space, into the room, soft eyes opening when you're ready. Yeah, how did you go, my friend? Hopefully you were able to connect with this part of you and get a sense. It's a different language when we do hypnosis. It's a different way of experiencing ourselves. It's more heart and gut than it is head, intellect. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully this makes sense. Please reach out with any questions. Do the free online quiz. The only thing that asks of you is your email. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Any comments? This is all encouraging me to keep going. It just feels right to offer all this and share this and invite you into some deeper healing. So here for you any way, as you wish, as you need, and hope you've found this really helpful today.